How's it going, everyone? This is Dominick again from the Comic Book Report YouTube channel, back to do a guest review for organicpricedbooks.com. And today I'm here to review a DC Omnibus, and not just any omnibus. Today we're talking about Superman, the Death and Return of Superman Omnibus. This one is, of course, the 2022 reprint of this book. It has a really great new dust jacket, as you can see here, compared to some of maybe the older publications. We also have a fold-out image during the Death of Superman issue, versus in older printings, I believe it was the image, and then the next page was what the fold-out would have been. Anyway, it's a really great feature of this book, but otherwise, I believe these collections are relatively identical to older printings. As far as this volume, it was primarily written by writers like Dan Jurgens, Louise Simonson, Jerry Ordway, Roger Stern, and more, and illustrated by illustrators like John Bogdanov, Tom Grummett, Jackson Geiss, Dan Jurgens, and more. The comics in this volume were first published by DC Comics beginning in 1992. The volume itself collects, and hey, buckle up, there's a lot here, Action Comics issues 683 through 692 and Annual 5, The Adventures of Superman issues 496 through 505 and Annual 5, Green Lantern issue 46, Justice League of America issues 69 and 70, Superman, the Man of Steel issues 17 through 26 and Annual 2, Superman issues 73 through 83 and Annual 5, Supergirl and Team Luthor Special issue 1, News Time, The Life and Death of Superman, and Superman, The Legacy of Superman issue 1. This is an oversized hardcover edition with nice glossy print paper stock and a whopping 1,370 pages. As you've been noticing, the dust jacket is predominantly black with some bloody red Superman logos. We have the nice kind of ripped up Superman cape that's on the kind of flagpole on the cover. Really, really shocking kind of stark imagery here that really conveys the gravity of the death of Superman. I absolutely love it. I think older printings of this book had more kind of dynamic comic book art on the front, but I love kind of the sleek look of this, the kind of minimalist approach, only having the couple of Death of Superman kind of iconography here. The dust jacket is absolutely beautiful. Like I said, mostly black, but it looks stunning on the bookcase. In addition to the dust jacket itself, the under the dust jacket artwork, the actual art printed on the hardback book itself, is also absolutely striking. It's a great battle sequence between Superman and, of course, Doomsday, that giant monstrous villain responsible for maybe one of the events listed on the title of this book. Anyway, some great art here. I love the design work of this edition. Again, this is the 2022 reprint of this omnibus. I just absolutely love that wraparound cover on the hardback. And now that we've finished looking at the exteriors, I did want to share a moment looking at the binding of this gigantic omnibus. It is a glued binding, so we'll see how it holds up. This is an incredibly huge book. There is a bit of gutter loss in this bad boy. You'll see a bit as I flip through it. I think it's more or less negligible. I don't really have a huge complaint here. Of course, I would have loved a sewn binding and maybe a little less gutter loss, but overall, I have no real serious complaints here. So far, it's holding up nicely, which given its size is pretty impressive. You can again see as I flip through and make your determination for yourself on this binding. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the book proper. I'm happy to say that after the title page and the publication information, we do have a full table of contents for this bad boy. I always love seeing a properly mapped and listed table of contents, including the page numbers, the kind of lists of the issues, things like that. Love, love, love seeing it. This is a real 90s comic epic. It's one of the biggest events at DC Comics at the time, and for me, it's one of my favorite examples of 90s comics done right. So what does this include? And I'll try to be delicate on spoilers here, but I do have to set up a little bit so you can understand kind of the scope of this book. As the title suggests, this includes the death and return of Superman. Yes, those are plot events, but it's spoiled literally in the title of the book, so I'm hoping it's okay. What this really includes is the entire grand story arc of the death of Superman, which pits Superman against this monstrous figure known as Doomsday. He's trying to defend Metropolis and really the better part of the world, trying to stop this monstrous villain. At any rate, the unthinkable does occur. We do have the death of Superman. And what follows in this omnibus is this period known as Funeral for a Friend, or the world without Superman, and it really has this kind of eulogy-like quality to to it. We get to see the ramifications of the death of Superman and how it impacts not only his loved ones, his friends, families, colleagues, but also all of the array of the DC Universe heroes and villains, and we get to see the impact that this one event has on so many facets of the greater DC Universe. After that point, we do have the return of the Superman and kind of the reign of the Superman era. Basically, at one point, what occurs is within Metropolis, we have the emergence of 4 Superman-like heroes, some of which are claiming to be Superman himself. Some, in the case of John Henry Irons, Steel, is really just trying to capture the essence of Superman, trying to take on the mantle of hope and justice. Anyway, we have these 4 Superman-like figures all vying for the Superman spot in Metropolis, in the absence of course, our favorite Big Blue. It's a really, really fascinating arc for this character and comics in general. And yes, we have the full death and return of Superman and everything in the middle. Really, really love this era of Superman. To me, it's one of the most interesting times in his history. And I think because of what we see, especially during that Funeral for a Friend, World Without Superman era, kind of in the middle of this omnibus, I feel like this is a great book that really gives you a better grasp of the DC Universe as a whole. I could say the same thing for works like the 52 Omnibus or Infinite Crisis Omnibus, where we really have kind of the grander happenings within this whole universe, and I think it's impressive to see that in a titled omnibus. Yes, we're supposed to be following just Superman, but we really get to see so much more from so many different characters in DC Comics, and I really love it. It makes this book feel even bigger and more impactful than what you would think just being a Superman book. Flipping through the collection a bit here, trying to minimize spoilers, but give you a good feeling of how this omnibus lays open, some of the different art styles and issues included. I think that it's a really good showcasing of a lot of different 90s artists. I think that overall the panel layout can be fairly straightforward, but we do have some nice experimentation with some of the layouts given different issues. I really like at certain points we have a lot of great splash pages and kind of spread pages, which again just showcase some of the beautiful artists we have attached to this omnibus. Overall, I just think it's a great book. I feel like there is a relatively timeless quality to some of the issues included here. I think if you're a Superman fan and you somehow have never read The Death and Return of Superman, I highly recommend this story for you guys. I used to have this run for the most part collected in old trade paperbacks, but there's nothing quite like this oversized format. I love the glossy print paper stock. I love the dust jacket. I love just having this massive Superman tome in my library now. Again, such a definitive part of his history, and really just a great story, or sequence of stories in this case of the omnibus. If this collection had any drawbacks for me, I would have hoped to have a sewn binding on a book this big, but in addition to that, I do think that there's parts in this book that feel a little bit bloated. I don't think that the pacing is always as tight as it maybe could be, and perhaps that's because we switched from so many different ongoing comic book titles and Superman titles at the time. I do think that there's still a really good degree of cohesion given everything going on, but sometimes this story can feel a bit bloated. I do think that it's still great that we have all of these issues included, so you get the full scope of these narratives across the death and return of Superman and so much that happens in between. But I think overall this is still a memorable book and a must-buy for so many Superman fans out there. Going back to the art really quickly, looking at like this issue in particular, you can definitely see more modern touches to the art style. This is when we're starting to get more into the modernization and kind of experimentation we see in a lot of 90s art. I love seeing some of that in this omnibus. Even from the beginning of the book toward the end of the book, you can see some developments in some of the art styles of the time. I think that this book, while it does have again some timeless qualities, there is a feeling that this is kind of a time capsule book at the same time. This is such a really specific time and place when this occurred, and I love that they've collected all of this, like I said, in one gigantic omnibus. I do think for people that want to check out Superman, this is one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite eras, and I do think you can even enjoy this as a new reader. Granted, there are large portions of this omnibus that don't even include the title character, but honestly, it almost doesn't even matter because his presence is so felt, and the storyline really has survived the test of time. This is a great Superman book and a great DC comic book. At the back of the collection, we do have a great handful of extras, which I love to see. We have different covers and kind of art collections. We have the cover to some paperback kind of trades that they've released over time. We have some great kind of behind the scenes artwork, a couple sketches, things like that. I really love seeing a handful of extras at the back of an omnibus. I think that it absolutely makes the cost of entry just even that much more worth it. And this has a really healthy amount of extras, which I just was such a delight to see. A really great, well-made book. It's a big one though, folks, but I highly recommend it to DC Comic fans out there. And really, that's your basic overview for Superman, The Death and Return of Superman Omnibus. If you do want a fuller review of this book with a little bit more spoilers, you can check out my channel, The Comic Book Report. I've already released the review, so you can go ahead and find it. And if you want to pick up your own copy, definitely go to organicpricedbooks.com. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, have a good one.